Imagine if you had permission to be yourself. Not the edited version, not the version you think people want to see, but the real, authentic you. That's what we're talking about today. Welcome to Talk, Learn, Teach, the podcast that helps you grow in English and grow as a person. I'm James.
And I'm Emma. And honestly, this topic changed my life, not just as a language learner, but as a human being. When you stop performing for an invisible audience, everything becomes easier. Your English flows better. Your ideas are clearer. Your life is lighter.
That's exactly right. So if you've ever held back from speaking English because you were worried about judgment, or if you've ever stayed quiet when you wanted to share your opinion, this episode is for you. And before we jump in, please subscribe to Talk, Learn, Teach. We release new episodes every week, and share this with someone you care about. Tell them about Talk, Learn, Teach.
Yes, we want to build a community of people who are brave enough to be themselves. So share it, recommend it. Let's grow together.
Now, let me ask you something. When was the first time you remember feeling judged? Not just a little bit, but really feeling like someone was watching you and finding you lacking.
I remember mine. I was in a classroom. I must have been about 7 years old. I stood up to answer a question in front of everyone, and my answer was wrong. The teacher didn't make fun of me, but some of the kids did. And I remember my face getting so hot. My heart was pounding.
That experience, it doesn't just disappear, does it?
No, I'm 34 years old now, and I still remember exactly how that felt. And for years, I was terrified to be wrong in front of people. That one moment created a story that lasted decades.
That's the thing about early experiences. They get stored in our body. They become part of how we see the world. And for a lot of us, that story is, I'm not safe to be myself.
Exactly. And then we become language learners, and suddenly we're in situations where we have to be vulnerable. We have to speak out loud. We have to risk being wrong.
And that childhood wound gets activated all over again.
Right. So today, I want to help people understand where this fear comes from, and more importantly, how to move past it. Because this fear is costing you. It's costing you your voice. It's costing you your relationships. It's costing you your growth.
Let's start with something simple, the fear of judgment. Most people think judgment is this big external thing, like people are constantly evaluating them. But here's the truth. Most of the judgment you're experiencing is actually internal.
What do you mean?
I mean, you're judging yourself. You're creating a mental picture of how people might react, and that mental picture is usually way harsher than the real thing. You're the one being mean to yourself.
Oh my gosh, yes. I do this all the time. I'll say something in English and nobody reacts badly, but in my head, I've created this whole scenario where people are thinking negative things about me.
So the judgment is not happening. You're imagining it.
Yes, and that's kind of liberating, actually, because that means I'm the one with the power. I can choose different thoughts.
Exactly. And here's what I want to say to anyone listening who is learning English. Your brain is trying to protect you. It's creating these fearful scenarios to keep you safe, but that protection is actually hurting you.
It's like your brain is a security guard who's too aggressive. It's blocking everyone from coming in, even the people who want to be your friends.
I like that, yes. So the first step is to recognize this fear is not real. It's a story your brain is telling you, and stories can be rewritten.
Now, I want to talk about something specific, the fear of making mistakes in English, because I think this is the biggest barrier for English learners.
Yes, people would rather stay silent than risk a mistake.
And it's so sad, because mistakes are how we learn. Mistakes are evidence that we're trying. Mistakes are not failure. They're feedback.
I used to have this belief that if I made a mistake, people would think I was stupid. So I developed this strategy. I would only speak when I was 100% sure I had the right words. But you know what happened?
What?
I barely ever spoke. I missed so many conversations, so many opportunities, so many connections.
What changed for you?
I realized something. The people I respected most, the people I looked up to, they weren't the people who never made mistakes. They were the people who made mistakes and kept going anyway. They had this quality of just moving forward.
Resilience.
Yes. And I thought, why am I holding myself to this impossible standard of perfection? No native speaker is perfect. Nobody is perfect. So why am I trying to be?
This is so important for English learners to understand. Your mistakes don't make you less worthy, they make you brave.
And here's a practical thing you can do. Next time you make a mistake in English, don't apologize. Don't make a big deal out of it. Just correct yourself quietly and move on. Because what happens when you apologize for every mistake?
You're reinforcing the fear.
Right. You're reinforcing the fear. But if you just keep talking, you're showing your brain this is normal. Mistakes are just part of communication.
I love that, because your brain learns from what you do, not from what you think.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about something else that stops people, and this is the fear of standing out. There's this idea that if you're different, if you have an accent, if you speak differently, you'll be rejected.
This one hits close to home. When I moved to a new country to learn English, I was so afraid of my accent. I was so afraid that people would hear my accent and think I didn't belong.
What did you do?
I tried to hide it. I tried to blend in. I would speak very quietly. I would avoid conversations. And you know what happened? I was miserable. And my English wasn't even improving because I wasn't practicing.
So what changed?
One day, I was at a coffee shop, and the barista asked me where I was from, and instead of dodging the question, I just answered. I told her about my home country, and she asked me more questions, and we had this lovely conversation. And you know what she said at the end?
What?
She said, "Your accent is so beautiful. It's interesting to hear you talk." And in that moment, I realized my accent is not a flaw. It's a part of my story.
That's beautiful.
And now I embrace my accent. I even lean into it sometimes. And people respond so much better. They're more engaged, they're more curious, because I'm more authentic.
I think this is something that a lot of English learners need to hear. Your accent is not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of. It shows that you have the courage to learn a new language.
And honestly, accents are attractive. They're interesting. They make you memorable. If everyone sounded exactly the same, the world would be so boring.
Very true. So here's what I want to say. Stop trying to erase your accent. Stop trying to be invisible. Instead, lean into who you are. Speak with confidence. Use your accent. Use your unique way of expressing yourself, because that's what makes you interesting.
Now, we've talked about internal fears. Let's talk about external situations. What do you do when someone actually does judge you or criticize you?
Oh, this is a big one.
Because sometimes people will say mean things. Sometimes people will mock your English. And that's real. That actually happens.
It does, and I want to be honest about that. It's not pleasant, but here's what I've learned. Other people's criticism says so much more about them than it says about you.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. Why would someone mock your English? Usually it's because they're insecure about something. Maybe they've never had the guts to learn another language. Maybe they're threatened by your growth. Maybe they're having a bad day and they're lashing out.
So it's not actually about me.
Right. Their criticism is about their own limitations, not about your worth. And once you understand that, you can let it roll off your back.
I have a different perspective on this. When someone criticizes me, I try to see if there's anything true in what they're saying. And if there is, I use it as information. If there isn't, I just let it go.
That's really mature. That's the practice of discernment.
Right. So not all criticism is wrong, but most of it says more about the other person than about you.
And for English learners specifically, I want to say this. If someone criticizes your English, remember this. You are learning. You're not supposed to be perfect. And the fact that you're learning shows courage. That person is probably not doing anything difficult right now.
Yes, and I actually want to reframe criticism. What if criticism is an invitation to grow? What if it's not an attack, but an opportunity?
I like that. So instead of being defensive, you get curious.
Yes, you ask, what can I learn from this? And usually you learn something valuable, even if the person was rude about it.
Now, let's talk about the physical experience of caring what people think, because it's not just in your head, it's in your body.
What do you mean?
When you're worried about judgment, your nervous system goes into fight or flight mode. Your chest gets tight, your stomach gets anxious, your voice gets smaller. It's a physical response.
And this affects your English too. Your words come out different. Your confidence is shot.
So one of the things I do is something called grounding. It's a way to bring your nervous system back to calm.
How do you do it?
There are lots of ways. One simple way is the 5 senses technique. You notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste.
Why does that work?
Because it brings your attention to the present moment. And when you're in the present moment, you're not thinking about what people might be judging. You're just here. You're just experiencing right now.
And you can do this right before you speak English?
Yes, right before a presentation or a conversation, take 30 seconds and do this technique, and your nervous system will calm down.
That's so practical. I'm going to try that.
Now, here's something important. Caring what people think is not all bad. Some amount of it is normal. Some amount is healthy. It's called social awareness. It helps us be considerate of others.
So we're not saying become completely selfish and not care about anyone.
No, we're saying find the balance. Care about other people. Be considerate, but don't let their opinions control your life. There's a difference between being aware of others and being imprisoned by their opinions.
Right. It's like I care that I'm a good friend, so I listen to my friend's feedback about our friendship, but I don't care if my friend judges how I speak English. That's not their business.
Exactly. So you're discerning about whose opinions matter and whose don't.
This brings me to something I want to talk about, and that's the importance of surrounding yourself with people who support you.
Yes, this is huge.
Because if you're surrounded by people who are constantly criticizing you or judging you, it's so much harder to let go of that fear.
It's like trying to swim while someone's holding your head underwater.
Exactly. So one of the things I did was I started spending more time with people who believed in me, people who wanted me to succeed.
And how did that change things?
It changed everything. Because when people believe in you, you start to believe in yourself. When people encourage you, you become braver. Your English improves faster because you're practicing in a supportive environment.
And for people who are learning English alone without a supportive community, what would you say?
I would say find your people. Find an online community. Find a conversation partner. Find even one person who believes in you. Because you don't need a whole crowd. You just need one person in your corner.
One person can change everything.
Yes, and actually, once you start being more yourself, once you stop trying to hide, you naturally attract people who like you because you're being authentic.
I think we've been taught that if we're ourselves, people will reject us. But the truth is the opposite. When you're authentic, you attract genuine connections. When you're fake, you attract fake connections.
And fake connections are exhausting. You're constantly performing. You're constantly managing what you say and do.
Whereas genuine connections are energizing. You can relax. You can be yourself. And that actually makes it so much easier to improve your English, too.
Because you're not using all your mental energy to perform. You're using it to learn and grow.
Exactly. Now, I want to talk about something practical. What do you do when you feel the fear rising up, when you're about to speak English and suddenly you're scared?
That's such a real moment. That's when the fear is strongest.
Yes, and I have a technique for this. I call it the pause and pivot. The moment you notice the fear, you pause. You just stop for a second.
And then what?
And then you ask yourself, is this fear protecting me from real danger? Usually the answer is no. You're not in physical danger. You're just speaking English.
So you're challenging the fear with logic.
Right. And then you pivot. You remind yourself of something true, like, my accent doesn't define my worth, or making a mistake doesn't make me stupid, or this person is probably not judging me as harshly as I think.
And does that actually reduce the fear?
It does. Not completely, but it reduces it enough that you can act anyway. You can speak. You can move forward.
Because the goal is not to feel fearless. The goal is to feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yes, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting in spite of the fear.
I love that. Now, I want to talk about reinvention. Because I think part of overcoming this fear is about becoming a new version of yourself.
A version that's not afraid?
Not completely not afraid, but a version that's not controlled by fear, a version that's willing to take risks.
I think when you decide to learn a language, you're actually deciding to reinvent yourself in some way.
Yes, you're creating a new identity, an English-speaking identity, and in that identity, you can be different than you are in your native language.
That's interesting. So you can use English as a way to practice being a new version of yourself?
Exactly. In my native language, I'm quiet, I'm reserved. But in English, I gave myself permission to be more outgoing, to ask more questions, to be more curious. And that actually made me more outgoing in my native language, too.
So the new identity you created actually changed your whole life.
It did. I became more confident overall because I practiced being confident in English.
That's powerful. So when you're learning English, you're not just learning a language, you're learning to be a different person, a braver person.
A more authentic person, a more free person.
Now I want to ask you something. If you could go back and talk to yourself when you were first learning English, what would you say?
Oh, man. I would say, Emma, the people you're afraid of are not thinking about you as much as you think they are. They're too busy worrying about themselves. So relax, be yourself. Say the silly things, make the mistakes, because those are the moments you'll actually learn and grow.
And what would I tell young me? I think I would say, James, your value doesn't depend on being perfect. Your value is just because you exist. So you can afford to take risks. You can afford to fail, because nothing can take away your worth.
Those are beautiful messages.
And I think if every English learner heard those messages and believed them, so many barriers would fall away.
Yes, because so much of what stops us is this false belief that our worth is conditional, that we have to earn it by being good enough.
But worth isn't something you earn, it's something you already have.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to give people some actual practices they can do to overcome this fear.
Yes, let's get practical.
So, first, I would say start small. You don't have to jump in the deep end. You don't have to speak to a big group or give a presentation tomorrow.
What do you mean by start small?
Like, maybe you speak to one person. Maybe you comment on a social media post in English. Maybe you order your coffee in English, even though it's scary. Start with tiny, manageable risks.
And every time you do something small and nothing bad happens, your brain learns, oh, this is safe.
Right. You're slowly rewiring your nervous system. You're creating new neural pathways of confidence.
What else?
I would say celebrate your wins, no matter how small they are. Did you speak English today? Celebrate it. Did you make a mistake and keep going anyway? That's huge. Celebrate it.
Because your brain learns from celebration. When you celebrate something, you're telling your brain, this is good, do this again.
Exactly. And a lot of people skip this step. They just move on to the next challenge. But celebration is actually crucial for motivation and confidence.
What else?
I would say find a way to process your fears. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's talking to a trusted friend. Maybe it's therapy. But don't just carry these fears around inside.
Because when you externalize the fear, it loses power.
Right. And often, when you talk about it or write about it, you realize how illogical it is. You realize how much of it is just a story.
And one more thing. Remember your why. Why are you learning English? Is it for your career? Is it for travel? Is it for connection? Whatever it is, remember that when you're scared.
Because your why is more powerful than your fear. If you want something bad enough, you'll push through the fear.
I think people underestimate the power of having a clear why. It's like having a North Star.
Yes, it guides you when everything else is confusing.
Well, Emma, this has been such a good conversation. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground.
Me too. And I hope our listeners are feeling less alone, because this fear is so common, but it's also so changeable. You can absolutely overcome it.
Yes. And the funny thing is, once you start overcoming it, you realize you've been powerful the whole time. You were just scared of your own power.
That's beautiful. Okay, so as we wrap up, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to Talk, Learn, Teach. We have new episodes every week.
And please share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. You have friends who are learning English and who are held back by fear. Tell them about this podcast.
In the comments, we would love to hear from you. What's one fear you have about speaking English? And what's one step you're going to take this week to overcome it?
Yes, tell us your story, because your story might inspire someone else, and that's how we build this community.
We read every comment, and sometimes we respond directly, so don't be shy. Reach out.
And remember, you're not alone in this. There are thousands of people listening to this podcast right now who are on the exact same journey as you.
You're part of a community of brave people who are choosing growth over comfort.
And that's something to be really proud of. So thank you for listening to Talk, Learn, Teach.
Thank you for trusting us with your learning journey.
Until next time, be brave, be yourself, and keep learning.
You've got this.
See you next week.
Bye, friends.